she's actually working on
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you have to work some holidays, and it's better that than like Christmas or something, so she,
Yeah.
chooses to do that. Yeah.
Well, I'm still trying to find a time when we could get together and watch that wonderful
Oh,
film
yeah.
I want to share with you.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. Yeah.
Actually, there are two. There are two. One is the one I mentioned about the Bible,
Yeah.
the Naked and St. John Bible.
Yeah.
But the other one is Babette's Feast. Do you know Babette's Feast? It's my favorite all-time movie.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
that would be
Great.
fun.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to find a time
Sure.
when
Yeah.
I can work.
Yeah. I'll work it out. Yeah. Sounds great. Oh, great. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Let us say a prayer for us to begin, and then we'll get moving. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, by whose grace the whole body of your faithful people is governed and sanctified, receive our supplications and prayers which we offer before you for all members of your holy church, that in their vocation and ministry they may truly and devoutly serve you. Through our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Great. So as we've started at the beginning of these meetings, just giving a quick update from vestry. So our vestry met on Wednesday. I neglected to ask anyone if they wanted to summarize what we talked about, so I'll have to do it myself. So vestry met this past Wednesday. We normally meet at someone's home over a meal for dinner and discuss the stuff that we need to discuss for the parish. So we were at the Tut Hills this week, and we began by talking about we can talk more about this too, because it is it's a different kind of property issue, but it is a property issue. The new acquisition of a house for housing, permanently housing refugees. I don't know I think everyone's heard the details of a duplex in Amesbury, not far from here, where two families can live that we've been able to acquire. And closing actually on it tomorrow morning. So should have everything. And then we can get in and do some updates and repairs that we want to do. Mark's been checking some things out and with us, and Stu, and we have a contractor as well. So it's really exciting news, and I hope actually people realize the gravity and weight of this and the excitement that it is. We are, to our knowledge, no one's ever done this, right? This is a new pioneering thing to actually begin. And so there's this house, but there's also some lots we're looking, and I say we, it's not just St. Paul's, right? It's a group of churches, and we're calling ourselves the Resettlement Partnership, which is a partnership of different people throughout our community and beyond, different organizations, looking at not only this property, but constructing new properties as well on some empty lots here in Newburyport and in West Newbury, and creating a new system of refugee housing. There are currently precisely 0 housing solutions or pathways for forcibly displaced people or refugees in the country. And we're in a state of crisis, right? I mean, we're in an official state of emergency in the state of Massachusetts and several others, right? The governor has declared a state of emergency because our shelter system, our hotels and motels, ERs, because people can't be turned away from ERs, they're sleeping there. They're all overrun, and now I got an email last week from the Office for Refugees and Immigrants in the state asking if I could help reaching out to any contacts I have, either in the refugee resettlement world or the church world, to find more communal space for people to temporarily stay, because now they're landing in the airport and sleeping in the airport. And in a state of emergency like this. And, I mean, we live in a pretty comfortable, most of us, a pretty comfortable life, I think. But the world is on fire. Right? The world is on fire. And we have to do all that we can to support the world's most vulnerable people, from whom everything has been taken. And they, yeah. So that's what we're seeking to do. And I mean, our state and everyone in the country, whatever, are trying to do it in the ways they can too, but it's like drinking water from a fire hydrant, right? And so there's no space or capacity or resources to do anything long-term to actually solve the problem, because it's meeting the daily emergency and the daily emergency and the daily emergency and the daily emergency. And so what we're seeking to do is create a new system of permanently earmarked refugee homes that into the future will actually income from those properties will multiply into more properties, into more properties, into more properties, so that there can be a system in place, and 50 years from now there could be dozens of homes and opportunities and housing solutions. It's also a model that we're hoping can be, well, it could be, if we're successful here with this model, it can be repeated anywhere, right? So it's not something that only has to happen here, but can happen anywhere and everywhere. And it's something that others have recognized as well, including the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Office for Refugees and Immigrants from the state, and things. So we're hoping to be able to create something that can be life-changing and revolutionary other places as well. And this Amesbury property makes it tangible, right? It's no longer just idea form, but there's something tangible on the ground that, and it's just a remarkable and amazing thing. And I'm so thrilled to be a part of this community who step out and do it. When we have a vestry who, unanimously says when this opportunity is before them, of course we should do this, and we'll figure out how. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what, unanimously just say, yes, we absolutely must do this. This is who we are. That's the kind of community you want to be a part of, right? Not, there are plenty of churches who are spending all their time fighting over the color of the carpet, or whatever. And this community lives for what matters, right? And lives out the gospel of Jesus. And so it's a thrilling and amazing thing. But we can talk, more in detail about that if there are detailed questions as well. Yes. Yeah. So right now, as of tomorrow morning, it will be St. Paul's. So the grand scheme and the plan of the development of this new system of housing is a communal and not just, everything doesn't rest on St. Paul's, right, to accomplish this. But the systems and structures needed for what we're looking forward to doing, aren't yet in place. And this property came up, and it was the same price about per square foot as it is to build right now. So it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. So we didn't have the structures in place, which we will in the future. So St. Paul's won't have to own it forever, right, and be the sole owner of it forever. But for now, it was the only way to do it quickly because, things go up, properties go up on Friday, and then offers are due on Monday, and, then it's over, right? And so we had to, that's why, for now, St. Paul's is going to be on the deed of that property.
When you're talking about the whole scheme,
Yeah.
you refer to the income.
Yeah. The income, yeah. How they'll create income. Well, the goal is to, through fundraising efforts and grants and things, to be able to pay off the homes, right? So that families, people living in them will pay rent, but that rent, we don't want their money, right? And we're not really seeking to make profit. So that rent will go into something called an individual development account. Often those have matching. There are charities that match those as well, so what's put in. So we're hoping to set up an IDA, individual development account, which will have matching funds as well, if we can. Once they accrue enough in that over a few years to make a down payment on the house for the affordable price that it was built or purchased, right, because they'll be earmarked as affordable housing, they then can become the homeowners of the house, right? And when they purchase the house with their own mortgage or whatever, the money that's brought in from, say it costs $350,000 to build a house on a free lot or $400,000, Once they buy it for that, that money then goes towards developing another one. So the initial 5 to 7 or 8 homes we're looking at being able to do, it was 5, but now that we have the duplex, that's a couple more, will turn into 12 homes, which will turn into 18 homes, which will turn into 30 homes, which will turn into 55 homes, whatever, over time. So it's a system that, and that means also the entity holding them. There's an affordable housing agency or organization that we're hoping that looks like it's going to partner with us, which would be wonderful, because they like property management, all of that they handle, and they just take it over. And if not, then the resettlement partnership group will have to form its own trust or LLC or something to hold these properties, right? So it's great on that end, because you never have to, because it's a lease to own program. You're not holding 100 properties if there are 100 properties. You're only holding a handful at a time. So it's great in that there's less to care for and keep up with. But it's also the best case scenario ever imaginable for first-generation refugees. Typically in this country and other countries too, refugees are sworn to a life of poverty for a few generations. I mean, and maybe never coming out. And they'll become first-generation equity-building, wealth-creating homeowners upon being new arrivals. And so it's completely revolutionary for refugees themselves, but also a really feasible and viable, constructive way forward for those of us who are trying to develop the housing too, right? Because it's one thing if you say, oh, we need to build a 100-unit skyscraper apartment building, whatever. Well, one, you got to manage all that property, but two, you have to raise about $50 million to do it, right? And so whereas you can develop a few homes, to get started with much less money raised, right? And much less responsibility of those properties, which themselves can be a self-generating, like organic ecosystem of housing that recreates itself. So that's the plan. And it is still somewhat in idea form on that level, but now that we have this house, the goal is get that fully paid off, right, with more fundraising, and be able to begin this process. There are 2 lots in Newburyport we're working with the mayor's office and the city on, but they will require, for land disposition, for us to be able to build on them, they require a city council vote. We're not quite there yet with the city council. We have some things to line up, and then hopefully we can convince that. But there's All Saints West Newbury has a large property there. Church has been through a lot over the past however many 15 years or whatever, with a very small dwindling congregation now and looking for new life. They have a giant, as many of you have probably been in there, used to be a daycare center and all this stuff, a giant parish hall building, which we're looking to convert into housing. They've already agreed, their vestry, that they want to do this. It's all a go. And requires no city council. It's private property, so just do whatever we want on it. And we've already spoken with the town of West Newbury. We can do whatever we want. It's amazing, the best opportunity, except the soil failed the septic test. And they're on septic rather than sewer. So there's always something. The soil failed the septic test, because West Newbury is not on sewer, they're on septic. Happen to know, and I'll give more details about this after next Friday when I have a meeting with them, but I happen to know, we happen to know, the Episcopal Church happens to know, if you know the land where it is in West Newbury, the people who own the property across the street on the other side of 113. So the plan going forward is to put septic on that side of the street and run it under the state road. And it's a huge property across the street, which would enable us to basically do whatever we want, whatever we can fit on, because we could have a giant septic system. So anything's possible, right? It's just, but there are always hiccups. And this is a big one. It would literally, got to get the crap out of the way to be able to do this. So those are the initial properties we're looking at. Now with the addition of the duplex, it's already built, which is great. Something already there. These are the lots and the plans going forward. But there's still some time needed to acquire those and some steps to take to get there. So that's a summary of all of that. I want to get to the building stuff. So we also, we had the St. Paul Center for Theology and Prayer that I've helped to start in the diocese. You know, we had a big event with Archbishop Rowan Williams, not yesterday, but the previous Saturday, which went really well. There were over 300 people registered from, well, we had a group present in person at the cathedral, and then over 300 people registered stretching from Hawaii to Ethiopia. It was quite great. It's on the, if you go to the cathedral's website, stpaulboston.org, there's a St. Paul Center page, and the video is now up of it. So if you missed it, you can go and watch. And there's a talk by Rowan Williams, and then a sort of interview thing with him, asking questions and things. That was very successful, and we look forward to doing more with that. The St. Paul Center, we applied for a big grant from the Lilly Foundation as well for funding and growing the thing. And so I think by the end of the year we should hear back from that too, which would be great to receive that. We had an update on children's stuff, which Deirdre and Lainey have been mainly running, and it's going really well. I mean, I think the kids are enjoying it, and it's wonderful to have that available now. Lydia is also doing we also have a nursery going, right, for babies and toddlers who come in, and we'll continue to look to grow that. The treasurer couldn't stick around today. There was the treasurer's report. So it says that we're about on our pledges for the year right now, about 11,000 under where we're expected to be, and so it's okay. It's not things fluctuate up and down throughout the year, but if you are behind on your pledge and haven't given up to date to where you sort of should be this year, take a look at that, please, if you can, and try to bridge that gap. And then building report from Stu, but we're going to hear about building. And then the fundraising and stewardship report, well, we just talked about stewardship a little bit, and but Dorothy and Lisa and Sue and others, and Tuthill are all working hard on the, and Bev Brennan, on the wreath sale and Christmas festival, which is going to be amazing. And it just keeps growing and getting bigger and better, which is great, So much is going to be happening there, and I can't wait for the baby horses. Stewardship, the overall dollars per pledge coming for 2024 is higher than 2023, which is great, sort of per person per dollar. But we're, as every year, we're still waiting for lots of people to, not lots of members to pledge. So we currently have 57 for the year. Last year we had 85 households, but it's pretty normal. Because we had them rolling in all the way till March last year. I mean, and if that's what it needs to be and that's how it happens, that's great. But it's obviously better if people can get them in sooner, because we can actually plan ahead and think about what's happening with the budget. So we're on a good sort of track there. But and if you haven't yet, there's no guilt, right? There's no guilt there. And doing all of this stuff and preparing for it, encouraging everyone else, and making devotional booklets and everything else, I haven't made mine yet. So it's I'll do it this week, right? I have accountability now. I fill out the online form. Yeah, you can ask Deb. Yeah, you can ask Deb. She can look it up. Yeah. Okay, great. So I would like to move on, unless there are questions about any other vestry stuff that we've been discussing. I'd like to move on to the building stuff. Yes.
Well, you mentioned the devotion.
Yeah.
I just want to tell you it was really, really great.
Oh, thanks.
It was such a good devotion. We used it every night for a while. We skipped a couple nights. It was terrific. So thank you for making that.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm glad people found it useful.
Yeah.
So let's start by, Bronson has kindly offered to give a bit of just a brief history of the building for those of you who don't know about it. And so would you like to, there's a mic here, Bronson, if you'd like to come up. And Bronson also found some amazing resources in the archives. I've got a few pictures of stuff here you can look at too. One is of the laying of the cornerstone of the building in 1922, actually, the year before it was consecrated. And then this is from the newspaper clips describing the whole ceremony, the whole service of consecration of the building, and it has the sermon from the bishop in it. Can you imagine if our local newspaper was still printing sermons? It'd be great. Thanks. It might not be on up there yet, but good? Okay.
It is on? Should be. I don't think so.
I mean, it's...
That looks like. Hello? Nope. Nope. You probably can't hear me.
Well, I can hear anyway, but people on the recording won't be able to. Here, I can give him.
No.
Yeah, something's wrong with here.
Something.
No, your pocket. Just put that on.
Sure.
I don't think that was working either.
Yeah, I think it's coming.
That's working.
What's that? You can hear it? Okay, good. Well, thanks. I'm Bronson de Stadler. I should say first, I really don't have leprosy. I have all these red marks, and it's because I went to the dermatologist on Friday, and I'm an old guy, and they zap me a lot. So the buildings, I mean, I think the buildings are about the evolution of the church. And I have to give maybe a little background before this church as to how this parish evolved and came. And some of you know this, and I'll try to be pretty brief about it, which is not my strong suit. But, you know, St. Paul's, as Father Jared said, the parish began in 1711, making it one of the 10 oldest parishes in America. It was founded because of the efforts of the Bishop of London during the reign of Queen Anne, when this was all British America, because it was seen that this area was weak. The church was very weak, as the bishop said, and we need to bolster it up. Why was it weak? Well, it was weak because this was Puritan New England. This was the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And the Puritans were not very happy to have a Church of England church in their midst. They considered the Church of England to be a heretical church, one against God. So there was tremendous amount of conflict about building a church. The governor had to be involved. People got arrested. It's a whole other story for another time. But the church was established, and it was established on the plains of Newbury, which is where the cemetery is, right across from Shaw's Market. So if you look out from Shaw's Market, that's where it was. You'll see a Celtic cross. And the church stayed there until the 1760s. It gradually fell into disuse because the Puritan people some of the Puritan people who attended had a lot of difficulty adjusting to the liturgical service of the Church of England. They also thought they could get away without paying banes to the district, because it was required to pledge or pay bane to them by law. But after a while, the authorities caught on to that and said, well, you got to pay even if you're going there and paying. So that was enough to cause them to drift away. In the meantime, on the water side, which is what this area was called, of Newburyport, the port of Newbury grew and was growing and growing and growing. It became, you know, the largest trading port on this part of the world, certainly surpassing Boston. And so the merchant class who was running these ships became very wealthy, and they wanted a church nearer to where they lived, number one. They also wanted a grand church, number two. And number three, they didn't really want to hang around with people who were of a lower class than they were. And that, England was a very class society at that time, and America was a very class society at that time. So, while Queen Anne's Chapel, which was the church located on the plains, was going, this church, a group of merchants got together and decided they wished to form a church and raise money to establish a church here. So Joseph Atkins, who's buried out in the yard and who was a wealthy merchant, bought the land which this church stands on right now in 1739. It was a blacksmith shop. He bought it, and they gathered a subscription of other wealthy merchants and raised the money to build the first church, which was a smaller wood frame structure here. And in the meantime, that church was built in about 1740, 1741. And during that time, both churches coexisted, although, again, Christians are remarkably good at fighting with one another, aren't they? I mean, there was tremendous conflict over who was in charge and who was the parish. It had to go all the way to the Bishop of London, who said, listen, it's one parish. You're going to have one rector, and it's going to be the guy who's over at Queen Anne, and he's got to come here, and you got to welcome him, and that's the story. And so with some resentment, they did. And he was the rector here, Matthias Plant, for quite a while, and his assistant was the Reverend Edward Bass. Now, the church really flourished here. It flourished because there was a lot of money. The merchant class was making a tremendous amount of money through trade. All of the merchants at this time were involved in the slave trade, the triangle trade from Africa. All of the wealthy merchants had African slave servants. Slaves were sold from the docks of Newburyport, as you may know or may not know. So a lot of the church money was built on a variety of trade, but it certainly included the slave trade. Now, Bishop Bass, who was the assistant rector for quite a while, when the Matthias Plant died, he became the rector of both churches. The Queen Anne's Chapel fell into disregard. Its wood was carted away. Its wood is probably in a lot of the barns and houses in Newbury. If you walk in the entryway there and you look up, you'll see the weather vane which stood on that church. It says 1711. It was on a barn in Newbury, and someone found it and donated it. So this church became very active. And up until the Revolutionary War, when the Revolutionary War began to happen, most merchants who were members here were in favor of a revolt against England. They weren't necessarily in favor of a revolution against England, because they were all Englishmen, they'd all taken an oath of allegiance, et cetera, but their money was getting really cut by taxation from Great Britain, because Great Britain saw these guys are making a lot of money, we want some of it. So they were very unhappy about that. And in fact, they were so unhappy about it, when the revolts began to occur, they sent a letter, and I have to tell this story because it so speaks to the evolution of the church. They wrote to Bishop Bass. He wasn't Bishop Bass, he was Reverend Bass at the time. The vestry wrote to him and said, we respectfully request that you stop all reference in your prayers to the the royal family of Great Britain and the Parliament of Great Britain. And the vestry members all signed it. Reverend Bass thought about it for 3 days. He had taken an oath of allegiance, as I think you did when you were ordained in England. Wasn't there was an oath to the Queen?
There was an oath there was the Queen and all of her successors, and all things that are lawful.
Ah.
So that's
That was the line?
Yeah. So number one, whose law?
Did you do it at Fulham Palace?
No. We take it at the cathedrals just before our ordination. Yeah.
I see.
It's signed on the 4th of July.
The ironies go on. The ironies go on. Well, Bishop Bass took 3 days. He thought about it. He had taken an oath of allegiance to the king, King George the third, when he was ordained, or the second, whenever he was ordained, in England at Fulham Palace. And he wrote back these sort of amazing words, which has a lot to do with the evolution of the church. He said, "Gentlemen, I received your request, and for the sake of continuing to preach the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ in this place, I will accede to your wishes." It was a great omission and a great moment. It's the reason the church survived through the Revolutionary War. St. Paul's was one of only 2 churches which remained open during the Revolutionary War. Church of England churches. Trinity Church in Boston, St. Paul's in Newburyport. Then anyway, and as you know, the Declaration of Independence, when the revolution really got fully gone, was read from the clerk's desk at the end of service on July 13th, 1776, by Tristram Dalton, who later became the first senator. Anyway, so this church really flourished to that time after the Revolution, when the new Episcopal parish of the United States, I'm not sure the technical term for it, was formed. The church was reformed as an American church with a lot of democratic principles, a vestry which had decision-making, who could accept a rector and could also fire a rector, which was unheard of in England. So that went on, and Bishop Edward Bass, as you know, became Bishop Bass, the first bishop of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and the second bishop of Rhode Island. But he remained at St. Paul's. Now, at the end of the 1700s, the congregation got together. Again, it was a very wealthy congregation, and decided to build a grander church. And so the 1800 church was built. It was a much larger wood frame structure, and it contained a lot of religious ornaments and lots of American flags and eagles and such. And that church remained in this spot until 1920. Now, in 1920, as you know, it burned to the ground. Again, ironies go on. It burned to the ground because it was one of the first churches or buildings in Newburyport to be electrified. So guess what? It had a lot of knob and tube and very primitive electric stuff, and the fire was caused by an electrical fire. In the same way, the Paul Revere bell you see in the entryway as you come on was also damaged because they put one of the very first electric clangers on it to ring the bell rather than do it by hand. It cracked and was no longer usable. Old South Church has an older Paul Revere bell. It never got an electric sounder, and they still pull it by rope, and it's in perfect condition. So, you know, it shows money doesn't always help too much, does it? It causes its own set of problems. So anyway, the church burned down and a subscription was raised. Again, this remained a very wealthy church at that time. It was the church of the Anglo-Saxon elite, of the white elite. And the money was raised to build this church. The architect hired was William Graves Perry. He was a local boy. He was born in Newburyport up on High Street to a wealthy family. He had an architectural firm in Boston, and he was very well known for his buildings, particularly on campuses like Brown, and lots of buildings on Harvard, and other kinds of impressive buildings, a couple of buildings overseas. So he was chosen to design the building, and he decided to design it to make it larger, but to retain the general structure of the outside. So if you look at a picture of the 1800 church, it's a wood frame and it has a porch around the outside. And this doesn't, but it has basically the same structure, the same steeple, the same, I don't know the technical terms, but the top of the tower with the rounded roof with, of course, the bishop's mitre at the top in honor of Bishop Bass. So it stayed pretty much the same. The two things that changed were, number one, it was moved forward to it was moved back from the street, because the original churches were all on the street, which is why there's no graves in the front of the church as you walk in. It's on the right or on the left. And they also built it in granite, because in the meantime, in 1862, St. Anna's Chapel had been built on granite, which was floated up from some of the quarries in Rockport. And so the decision was made to also make this granite and to make it extraordinarily sturdy. And it was designed to be in the same style as some of the earlier churches, without stained glass windows, but very large windows, which let in a lot of light, and had a much larger and grander pulpit and sounding board, and other features which were much more impressive. So that's kind of the general style. I mean, the general, I think, design is similar to the design which was popular in the 1800s from the Oxford movement, right? Which was a kind of Anglo-Catholic movement. And so if you look at churches from an earlier era, you'll see very similar kinds of setups as the altar and the chancel are set up here. I was in Amesbury over the week, and they had a very similar kind of setup on the church. So it's a beautiful building, an extraordinary building, and here we are to enjoy it. Is there anything else which would be helpful?
That's lovely. No, thanks so much, Boss. But you might have a question.
No? Go ahead. Yeah, there was a missionary church around just before the turn of the 1900s, and it was called Grace Chapel, and it was a part of this parish, and it was the building was donated by someone, and it functioned as a mission church for St. Paul's, because again, transportation wasn't easy for people to get around, and so this was a way for people in the neighborhood to be able to go and worship there. The white chairs you see with the cane seats, those were the chairs which were in Grace Chapel. When it closed in probably the 40s, I think, declining membership and other purposes, it's now a private home. Yes, that's right. They used to go. I heard them talk about it. Yeah.
I have a question on behalf of the knitters. We meet twice a month in the library.
Yes.
We noticed that prominence of Bishop Bass, these people with fireplaces.
Yes. I know. Good question. I have no idea. Why was Bishop Bass moved? I was a little. I know. I was a little shocked at that too. Do you know?
I didn't have anything to do with it.
Does anyone know? I don't know. Yeah.
He's still in there. He's around the corner.
Right, but he was coming.
He was. We just felt maybe something, there's so many children that were in the library these days, it just was a little bit more enjoyable to look at, and not to say he wasn't, but, for children, he's a little scary, so we just helped him around the corner. His eyes quality is great. Yeah. It was just sort of a collective vote to move the flowers over and move Reverend Bass to the other side for a while.
We need his light to hold the fire.
Well, just to say about that portrait, it's a pastel portrait. It was I think done in the late 1800s. The original from which that is taken is an oil painting, which is in the diocese. And I'm not sure where. I haven't seen it. It's always been on my mind to go down there and see it. But there's a larger oil painting of the bishop there.
I've always been struck, having grown up in the Episcopal Church, with kind of, in a really nice way, the Protestant-ness of, especially our windows and openness. The churches I grew up in were stone, very smaller and darker.
Yeah.
More like the chapel, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So was that just a fashion of the time?
I think, again, Father Jared may know some of this too, but I mean, there was she was asking about why, this has a sort of Protestant, almost congregational feel to it in some of its elements. And, why is that? Because so many Episcopal churches are stone, they have a lot of stained glass connected to them. So why is this so different? And I think the decision was made to kind of keep a lot of the trappings of the earlier church, but update them and change them. There was a lot of the Episcopal churches which were built in the 1800s, from 1860s on, like the chapel. There was a resurgence of interest in the medieval church. And there was this Oxford movement, which was looking back towards the Catholic roots of the Episcopal Church and of the Church of England. And so it became a style or a fashion to build churches in a stone, and they have a somewhat medieval look to them. Neo-Gothic. Is that the correct? Yeah. And stained glass, and lots of stained glass. Stained glass originally was used to instruct people, right? I mean, it was to instruct them on various aspects of Christian tradition and scripture. For illiterate congregations, but then became stylish.
As far as the style of this church, it reminds me very much of Christ Church in Philadelphia.
Uh-huh.
And the period, and as far as I know, that church is not burned, still as it was when it was built. Very, very early 1800s. So it's a federalist style, based in the classical, the neoclassical resurgence.
In Christchurch, Cambridge, actually. The chancel all been redone there, but it used to look almost exactly.
And also the bishops and
that's sort of a stylized version. You know, the original Reredos, and you can see it at King's Chapel, although they kind of became Unitarian and then they kind of went back to being Episcopal, and they're kind of a blend of the two. But their Reredos, it's a rectangular, and it has the same things. This is a much grander and sort of more stylized version, but it contains the same passages which were required by James I. He decreed that all Church of England churches, all Anglican churches, should have 3 things on their altar. They should have, well, the center one is pretty easy, right? It's the, and the one on the left is easy too. Our Father, right? The one on the right is always a little more challenging for people to get. Do you know what that is?
The Creed? The Apostles' Creed?
The Apostles' Creed. Well, bravo. Yes. So again, James I decreed that every church must have that. And so I think it became also the standard for churches, you know. I mean, he passed away, and I don't know whether his predecessor said you had to have it, but it became the standard, emblematic of a church whose roots were in the Church of England.
Do you think it was new?
Those are new, yeah, they were new. They were new for this building, yeah. Yes, and it burned. Yeah, I mean, it was restored, you know, it was restored, but, and I said to him, isn't it, I thought it would come out brighter. I said, that's the way it was painted. That's the way it was painted. And it has a lot of iconography along the sides that has all kinds of individual meanings. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Bronson. Sure. Really appreciate it. Thanks, great. Stu, so we are, I want to quickly go over, so anyone who needs to step away can step away. That's fine. There's no, you're not rude if you have somewhere to be or whatever. We're going a little bit longer than one, but it was worth it. It's really interesting and wonderful for everyone to be able to engage with that history. And I talked too much at the beginning about vestry stuff too. So now we're going to move on to current building stuff. You know, it makes sense to talk about that. We have to talk about a lot of vestry and the property committee, which Stu runs, and Stu's also the junior warden, of course. But it's really important for everyone to be able to be involved in what's happening and be able to discuss things and all that. So, Stu, turn it over to you.
First of all,
here, this is working now.
thank yous. First of all, I want to thank the property committee. We're not well represented here at the moment, but we have a bunch of guys and one woman who've been working for decades keeping up the place, and it's really a labor of love. I'll put out an appeal if you're a handy person and like to work with your hands doing carpentry, electrical stuff, plumbing. Bill Hobby just left, but he actually made these handrails to match the rest of the church and put them on as part of the accessibility initiative 4 years ago. So I just wanted to let you know that if you want to join us, we're all over 70. We need some younger folks to help out. I also want to let you know about our sexton's position. Earlier this year, we divided it in two. We have a cleaning component, which is handled by Green Cleaning. And then Mark Murphy, who's a parishioner, became the sexton. Actually, he's more of a facilities manager and fixes a lot of things. He, Deb, and I work together. If you have identified a need, let one of us know, and then we'll collaborate and figure out what we can do within the budget constraints, and we'll go from there and see what we can do to fix it.
And Mark is amazing.
Yes, he is. I wanted to start with a project that maybe not all of you know about, but last March, the Among Friends board was getting together. We learned about a food infrastructure grant that was being provided by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we decided to apply for it. We came up with a laundry list of things that we wanted, and Bonnie and I provided a list to Jen Mansfield, who's a grant writer. She wrote the grant, and we actually were awarded $41,309 to renovate the kitchen. We had the two people from the city, including the city health department, come in and tell us what we needed to include, but they forgot to tell us that our plumbing was not to code. And we found out about that afterwards. And the cost of that is $10,000. It started right now. I got in contact with Kim Rock at the Institution for Savings, and they provided a check for $10,000 to cover it. So, really great. And they had already given money to Among Friends just for the routine stuff. So, you'll see some things going on in there, but it won't. The kitchen won't be closed down until mid to late December. Okay. Getting to current projects. The vestry approved a submission to the diocese for a Stokes loan, which is low interest loan for property-related matters. And based on that, we were awarded it. And we started painting windows, soffits, trims. We had to do some carpentry that we weren't expecting because we had just closed everything up for the bats a year before, but mysteriously 2 holes appeared in the back of the church, and they had to mill wood to match, which they did. We have chimney repointing that we're going to be doing with that money. You might have noticed some peeling on the ceiling over there above one of the windows. That's because the chimney is still leaking. We fixed the chimney in the back for Mark because he was getting water and mold in his office, and that has not reappeared, right, Mark? Okay, good. Next week, no, the week after Thanksgiving, the 27th, the cork floor restoration is going to start. Cork is a type of wood, actually, which I never thought about, but it's going to be repaired, then sanded and sealed. So we're hoping it'll look a lot like the new part in the back, but because it's probably original, 100 years old, it won't look exactly the same, but it'll be a big improvement. So you can look forward to that. That'll take about a week or 10 days. We're also planning a ramp, which was approved in the 2019 accessibility plan to go up to the narthex door on the right-hand side as you face the church. So that's still in the works. That'll probably be in the spring. Other projects. We have made a bunch of improvements in the chapel based on a review by a state inspector, health department inspector, because of mold. And what we did was moldy debris was removed from the basement, which could have been left over from when the place was built. Right, Mark? That was our theory anyway. There was a section that was open to where the graves are on the side of the chapel that is towards High Street. So that's been closed up. The furnace filters replacements will now be a routine. We had the air ducts cleaned. We have 8 heating lines and 2 returns. They've all been vacuumed out. We also had the cushions steam cleaned. So all that's been done just in time for the festival coming up. Bell tower leaking, that was a project. We were working with American Steeple and Tower. We had pop seams, we had joints that had to be recaulked, and I think I spent 6 months working with Bob. You remember Bob? And he would say, well, I can't come over because it's raining. Remember how rainy it was this summer? And I said, but Bob, it's leaking in the tower. Well, so that's kind of how the discussion went. They fixed it about 3 or 4 weeks ago. At the end of service, a solderer came in. They also did the caulking. So Mark tells me the leaking has stopped, which is great news. If you've noticed the light out front, Doug Peck is working with Gamma Sonic and Newburyport Lighting to see if we can come up with a solar solution for lighting the church, maybe the chapel, and hopefully even these walkways, which are so dark at night. But we're working on that. I've been in touch with the city about the condition of the sidewalk out front. And I've explained to him it didn't do a whole lot of good to put a handicap space where the brick is so uneven. So they said that they will do that in the spring. So we just have to go for about 5 or 6 months being careful. We also have some aspirational improvements. Father Jared referred to that in his discussion. Number one on the list is organ, the organ. The organ is it was built in about 1920. It has a value, last I heard, $740,000. To fix the entire thing, it's going to cost us about $120,000. I used the word that Bronson used in his discussion. Maybe we take up a subscription to get that taken care of. But that's kind of number one on the list, and it includes replacing all the cloth-covered wiring, which is actually way out of code. Cleaning all the contacts. Mark's had to work around the keys that don't work. You're doing a fine job, Mark. We have to replace the wind chest pneumatic action, which I don't know what that is, but I know Mark does, and cleaning and voicing of reed pipes. And that's it. And those last two things are the most important, actually the most expensive part. Moving on to page 2. This won't take much longer. We would like to do some parish hall upgrades. And that would include sound dampening using acoustic panels. You all probably remember how hard it is to talk in there, particularly if it's a group session. We'd like to paint it. We hope to add 2 ADA compliant bathrooms using a portion of the library just off the hallway. And the current bathroom would become expanded freezer and refrigerator space so we could get them out of the parish hall. The memorial painting that's from 1977, we'd get a professional photograph and have that framed. And we think on the vestry that is probably appropriate. There's some chancel upgrades to improve accessibility. I haven't seen the plans, but I know Father Jared has some things in mind. And we also would like some pew modifications for handicap seating in the center somewhere, accessible by a wheelchair. And so we have a long laundry list of things that we're either working on or we'd like to work on. And does anybody have any questions or suggestions things that I might have left off?
And with the list, I mean, one of the things, oh yeah.
I just want to thank you because those were the 2 questions I had. You're just going to the ramp.
Yep.
And he's on a wheelchair seat, so thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. They're on the list.
Yeah, so, and part of the thing that is so important about the whole community being part of and discussing is how we do it. Both, again, as Sue's saying, well, there might be other things to think about too, so let us know, but also, for instance, the organ, we have to be creative about $120,000, for the organ, right? Or, so the amount we were able to get with the Stokes loan, and the Stokes loan from the diocese is a 1.75, is that right? Percent?
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, so super low, right? I mean, you can put money in the bank and actually make profit. You're not allowed to do that. You can't just take a loan in the bank. But, you have to take a loan for building stuff. So we've done that, but we didn't have enough. There was already a Stokes loan amount on the roof when the roof was redone, how many 5 or 6 years or whenever it was. And then the max you can do from the diocese is 150. So we're able to bring it up to 150, which is like another 70 or so, to do a lot of the other things he was talking about. But we can't do the organ that way unless we pay off the full 150 and do a new one. Because we can't go beyond that. So we can't do a Stokes loan. We'll have to figure out how else to get the money. And one creative idea was to find a way up front. It's a shame we can't do the Stokes loan, but find a way to get the money through a loan and do a sort of pledge sort of campaign, maybe in the spring. So I might not be able to give thousands of dollars all at once to the organ, but maybe I could give over 3 years $333, which works out to $1,000. If we get 100 people to do that, that's already 100,000. These sorts of things that we could do, because I would gladly sign up to do that. Could even call it the Trinity Pledge, because it's all threes. Or buying a key or whatever, like was done for the piano, that kind of thing. It's amazing what Mark's been able to do. There are literally things that don't work, like keys and stops that don't work, and he just knows how to play around them and can change them. It's pretty incredible, actually, and it's long overdue time to get this work done. So that's one thing. So we need to think creatively about how we do that and responsibly, and how we're good, stewards of this building, stewards of the organ, stewards of the financing for it. And then other, projects that we would like to get done, like updating the parish hall. I mean, that's if that was a really beautified space, not just for our community, but people go, if they get married here, if they have funerals here, but they go elsewhere, right, because it's kind of junky in there, right? They're not gonna have receptions. So that's actually a source of income. It could be as well, and just an offering to our wider community for other people to use that space in different ways. So that could be a really huge, sort of thing, and could actually have payback, income as well, and stuff like that. But we have to think creatively about how we can go about doing those things. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think the discussion, at least towards the end of my tenure, was that we needed to do a capital campaign for the organ. And I think we actually met with a couple of consultants.
We did, yeah.
Organized those, and one of them had laid out a plan for that to happen. And that is going to hopefully take care of the organ, and maybe a couple of other issues as well. So rather than spread it out over a number of years, it is something which had a beginning and an end. And he came up with an amount he thought would be reasonable for us to raise. So that was one. And then two, just to finish my spiel, I absolutely agree with you about the parish hall. We had some discussion, everything seemed to be way, and hope that might become part of it.
Yeah.
It's pretty dingy and crappy. I mean,
Yeah.
it just is. And I think the idea of, I wanted to paint it, but I always got pushback because of the mural, and there's some dissent in the mural. But, in a place I worked at one point, we did just what you're talking about, which is we had a professional come in and take very professional photographs. And so you really had a professional collection, which could be printed, and could be displayed in the future and all that before painting.
Yeah.
And that seemed like a very
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
like a sensible solution. Yeah. So the first thing he was saying, if you couldn't hear over here, was sorry, we should pass around the mic, but I can just repeat it a little bit. Doing a capital campaign. One important way to think about doing this is a capital campaign, and they'd talked with some consultants before about this, not just say for the organ or for the parish hall or something, but everything that needs to be done together, right, and knocking it all out, which I also think is a wise thing to do and easier to raise money for. So somebody might really want to give to the organ, but don't care about the parish hall. Or somebody might really want to give to the parish hall, but not care about fixing the organ. But if it's all lumped in together, right, then everyone can sort of be a part of that. One of the things that we're working hard at as a parish is learning stewardship and individual stewardship in our lives and what it means to live a life of offering and gift. We've been focusing a lot on that in the last few years, and each year our pledging has raised about 13 or 14%. You know, through a pandemic, most churches lost much more than that, and so that's been really. And so what we need to be careful about doing is not, okay, well, I was going to pledge this much, but I'm actually going to pledge half of that and give half of it to the organ or something. Like, we have to come up with creative ways to, you know, this kind of giving is above our normal function. Day-to-day giving, and so finding ways to do that. Capital campaigns, I mean, normally they say that an organization, a church, or whatever should do a capital campaign for about 3 times their annual budget. We don't need that much to do the stuff we're trying to do, so it'd be like a mini capital campaign or something, right? You know, so because that would be over $1 million, and luckily these things we're talking about doing isn't going to cost that much, right? So when we're thinking about capital campaign, it can be a little scary for people to think about raising all this money and giving all this money, but we're trying to, what about our mission in the world and living out the gospel and the amazing things that we're doing? Like we can't take from that, you know, to give, you know, to the building, but we're also stewards of the building. Well, you know, what we're talking about doing is not, I mean, you know, churches and other organizations with large structures and stuff like this spend way more than we're talking about spending normally in something like a capital campaign. So I definitely think it's something we can pull off, you know, without, you know, shifting a focus, right, and neglecting our call as the Church of Jesus Christ to meet the needs of the world.
Any other questions, Bob?
Two things. First of all, when you're thinking about the parish hall, remember tapestries make great acoustic panels. And the other thing is, I had a dear friend, now deceased, whose motto was, when it comes to estimating, it takes longer and costs more.
Yeah.
I know that from my house.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yep, I just want to thank you. I mean, what the property committee has done is amazing. There isn't. Yeah, I'm good at raking leaves. What are you talking
Excellent.
about? But I'm just, every single week, this church is being worked on.
Yeah.
Every single day, you come, there's ladders, there's this, there's that, marks everywhere. I mean, the things that have gotten solved in the last year, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, it is. And I think that's an important thing for people to realize too, that these, you know, spaces like this, there's constant maintenance. And one of the worst things you can do is defer the maintenance. And then that tiny leak in a chimney becomes like, you know, the whole roof, you know, decaying or something, you know. So we have to keep up with, like as you're saying, it's a daily and a weekly thing, and it's difficult. So much, I mean, and talk to any priest or any vestry member, anyone else, like at any church, and they'll tell you, like, sometimes it feels like life would just be easier if we like met in a school cafeteria every Sunday or something and didn't have to worry about all this and think about all the, you know. But this is, as I was preaching the sermon today, and as you know, we learning from our history from Bronson and stuff, and this is a significant part of our identity and who we are, and another offering and gift, another thing for which we are stewards of God's graces, right? Not our building, it's God's space, as everything is, and we are managers of it. So we have to manage it well. We have to steward it well. Yeah.
I think too, the other thing is, I mean, it's a gift to us, but it also can be a gift to the community if it's kept in good shape. You know, it becomes a place where lectures can happen, children's plays, where's Deidre, you know, children's plays can happen. So all of those things bring people into the church. They give them an experience of being here. Whatever that means or doesn't mean to them, they've been here, you know? So if the parish hall is done and people come here and see that and then are curious about looking in the church, that's even that is one way to bring people in, you know? So I think it's really important. I mean, the other thing too, which we, Stu, we used to talk so much about is if you do things in halfway measures, you get halfway responses. And if you do a crappy job fixing something, you either pay now or you pay more later. That's just the way it is. And churches, because they're short on funds, that's a struggle.
Yeah, cut corners. Yeah.
Annie?
I just want to acknowledge, on top of everything else, how much work has gone into helping the Afghans and their living conditions. And it's just constant issues, constant. And they've just been right there to help 20 people that are living downstairs.
Yeah. This is, thank you, Annie, and thank you personally for all the work you're doing. You're one of the ones who's doing so much. And also, one thing I meant to say earlier when we were talking about the refugee house, the new property, is thanking the volunteers working so hard day to day, which has freed me up to focus on, the larger housing piece and work with other people and do all of this stuff. And it wouldn't be possible without the dozens of people in the parish and some outside the parish too who help. With all the what Annie's talking about, that there's so many needs, and it's a really beautiful thing. It's a difficult thing. It hasn't been an easy process, but a beautiful part of our story, right, as a parish that we get to be a part of. And that actually brings up another building thing too, is that soonish, in the coming months, we can think about creative ways to use the bottom basement area, which will be free again too. Because I think going back to it being used for an hour on Sunday mornings for kids, right? I mean, it's too valuable a space for that. And there's all kinds of things that we could do for the community and with the community, with that kind of space. And so we've been talking it through, and we'll have more conversations as a parish about how we can do that. And there have been lots of good ideas already, from after school program type stuff to, Newburyport Youth Services has sought after it a few times, but they haven't been able to use it because it's being used as living space. But to art studio space, which is impossible for artists to find in Newburyport now, and we're ceasing to be an artist community. Right? It used to be a big artist community. We're ceasing to be one in Newburyport because artists can't afford to live here. So the artists that do live here bought homes, 30 years ago or whatever, and so in our aging out, but they could never move here now, right, and stay here. And so there's no studio space. So all of these kinds of things can be creative ways that we can start thinking about how we can be an offering to the wider community and minister to others in loving ways, but not quite there yet, but in a few months. And I'm sure we'll have a painting party or something down there at least for anyone who wants to join.
Any other questions? I've been asked to remind everybody to take some fruit. I hear that pomegranate has been claimed, but it's just a rumor.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.